Pinball, working on this driver board. It was originally in a Disco Fever, and right now it's my spare. I had another one that was working. I threw in the Disco Fever, and I'm trying to get this thing working. What I've already done is I put a new interconnect in there. I re-socketed these chips, swapped them out. Those old 40-year-old sockets are no good, so put some new sockets in there. So those are making good contact. But I still have a problem with it. When I put this game board in a game, the NPU will boot and everything, but the problem is there are four for the special solenoid controlled solenoids that kick on immediately, lock on. Wrote my note down here. So both slingshots, right pop and the left drop, they lock on right away. Django, sorry, he's at the door. Anyway, so these special solenoids, the reason they're special, so Django says he's going to behave the rest of the video. We'll see. All right, so these videos are special because they can be either controlled, apparently he's not going to be, so they can be controlled by the computer, so the computer can activate them, or they can be controlled directly by a switch on the playfield. So the idea was that, like, if you're hitting a slingshot, the ball hits a slingshot, you want that signal from to go directly to basically this chip, which operates this one, and so it doesn't have to go through the NPU, which would be sitting above it, because these computers were so slow. So like I said, these things are locking on. So I'm going to show you this is the, I've got this drawing here. This is actually from somebody's digitized one. It's identical, but it's from a Firepower. So if you look in here close, you'll see these IC 6 and 7. They're dealing with the special solenoids, and IC 8 and 9 are also dealing with special solenoids. By the way, you've got these three PIAs. This is also for the solenoids. First thing I did, I swapped out that PIA, that 6820, and no change. I didn't expect it to, but that was such an easy thing to do. I tried that first. So like I said, I've got four solenoids that are locking on. So remember, so we got 6 and 7 that are part of this, that are the switch connected to the switches, and we've got the 8 and 9. So if we go to the actual drawing here, this is a section over here for the special solenoids, and we zoom in here a little bit closer. My mouse where I can see it. Where's my mouse? There it is. Okay. So we've got 8 and 9. That's so sorry. 6 and 9. Then it goes over to the big transistor. So the 6 and 9 goes to the small transistor, which goes to the bigger transistor, which controls the solenoid. And again, it's 6 and 8, and 6 and 8, and 6 and 8, and 7 and 9, and 7 and 9. So we got 3 that are controlled by 9, and 3 that are controlled by 8, and in terms of 6 versus 7, it looks like 4 and 2. So anyway, I'm guessing, just as a guess here to start with, that it's a second row or second column of not transistors, but logic gates, these IC9s, these 7402s. But so that was my suspicion. So those reside here, these two sets right here. So the first step, next step that I did to kind of discern which one it might be is I got my multimeter and put it on diode test, and put your positive on the ground, and it's gonna be hard to do with test my chopstick skills. And do a diode test between the ground and one of the points there, and just like you get 0.67. So you're looking for something like, well, ideally between 0.4 and 0.7. exactly work that way with a chip, but oftentimes you will with these, especially with these logic checks, you will get something very close to like what you would expect on a diode test. So 0.5. And if I go through there and I go again between the ground and go all the way around, they're almost all about 0.5, except for when you go exactly diagonal, and that's when you're going between the ground there and the 5-volt source there. If I do the same thing on this chip, which is identical chip, I get very different numbers, and so I am these are all the kind of numbers I would expect, and these are not. I'm getting a lot of like 1s and 1.5s, which are way outside the range that I expect. So I am suspicious that this chip here is my bad chip. So I'm going to pull that out, and I'm going to stick it in my chip reader and see if it can, it ought to be able to read a 7402, 74 logic chip. So if it can identify it, then it's probably good. If it can't, it's probably bad. So that'll be my next step. So I got that 7400 taken out, placed it with the socket. The 7402 here, I'll stick it in the little IC tester. Turn it on. Oops, turn it on. See if it'll find anything. Not found. That generally means it's a bad chip. Set that aside. Here's another 7402 I've got. Stick that in there and see if it finds it. 74LSO2. That's the new version of the 7402. This little cheap sensor, it usually labels things as a new one, even though it's not a new one. This thing is old stock. But anyway, so we'll throw this sucker in there. So definitely that old chip was bad. It may not be the only problem, but it was definitely part of the problem and needed to go. So that's going in the trash. Put this one in there. I should say one more thing. Throw that in there with both hands. You know, I mentioned the fact that we had several locked on solenoids. Actually, the first thing I did before I even went looking at the chips is basically checking all these transistors with the diode check, and I actually did find several that were bad. This one was bad. That one was bad, and there was one of the special solenoids. So I replaced several of the transistors, and it still had issues. I made sure the coils were not shorted out. That wasn't the problem. Not the diodes with the coil weren't bad. Kind of went through a path of easy stuff and the more obvious stuff, and now I'm down to swapping chips on the board. So hopefully this will fix it, and we'll find out here in a little while. So we just threw in that board. There's that chip I socketed, put in there, and gonna turn it on and boot it up. See what happens. Should have a quick blink of the two LEDs at the top. Yep. Okay. That's good. We're booted up. And nothing's locked on before. I mean, immediately when I turned the game on, 3 or 4 of them, the coils were locked on. It's booted up, ready to go. That was not working before. So, yeah, I think that solved our issue. So, cool. Sometimes you get lucky.